All right, welcome back. Still on Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As we indicated, we have a loaded segment today, 3 topics to discuss. First, of course, will be on the passage of the appropriation bill for year 2020. And just before we commence, let's listen to this background by Abdul Malik Adio.
On the 8th of October 2019, President Muhammadu Buhari presented the 2020 appropriation bill to the joint session of the National Assembly.
Our government remains committed to ensuring the equitable sharing of economic prosperity. Our focus on inclusive growth and shared prosperity underscores our keen interest in catering for the poor and most vulnerable.
58 days down the line, the Senate has passed the 2020 budget of 10.59 trillion naira, 260 billion naira higher than the 10.3 trillion naira originally submitted by Mr. President.
I think we have done so much in a short while. We have given the executive everything they need. We have given them the budget by passing it. We have given them the finance bills. We have given them the public procurement amendment bill. These are central to ensuring that the implementation of the 2020 budget is improved over what has been happening in the last few years.
The budget is built on speculation of oil price benchmarked at $57 per barrel, with oil production of 2.18 million barrels per day, an exchange rate of 305 naira per dollar. Similarly, real GDP growth at 2.93% rate, while inflation is expected to remain slightly above single digit. The 2020 budget proposes increase in VAT rate from 5 to 7.5%, an additional revenue to fund health, education, and infrastructural development, with states and local government allocated 85% of all VAT revenue. Experts say Ministry of Works, Housing, Power and Transportation are getting the lion's share of the capital allocation. Finance experts say the 2020 budget proposal reflects the nation's current reality and the present administration's quest to sustain the achievements recorded so far in various sectors. With the passage of the 2020 budget by both the Senate and the House of Representatives, assent by Mr. President is next and will determine whether Nigeria will return to the January-December budget cycle as planned. Is this trend sustainable? And how will the 2020 appropriation bill translate to economic growth and human capital development? These are questions yearning for answers on Good Morning Nigeria.
And here we have guests that will certainly do justice to the topic for the first leg of our conversation this morning. And I would like to first of all introduce Honorable Umar Ibrahim El Yakub. Honorable Umar El Yakub is a senior special assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, House of Representatives. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, a regular face on this program whenever we're discussing issues concerning the economy and finance. We have Nii Akinsiju, who's a finance and investment analyst. Nii, it's good to have you this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, once again, our pleasure to have you with us. Let's begin with the SSA to the President on National Assembly Matters, Honorable El Yakub. In terms of process of the passage of the 2020 appropriation bill, what was your experience like?
Well, thank you very much. Our experience has been a very good one, and of course we all know how it all started, with a 9th Assembly that is focused, determined and committed to serving Nigerians alongside the executive as partners in nation building. Certainly that harmony and that relationship translated into expeditious passages of bills, as rightly pointed out by the President of the Senate in the opening of this program, whereby you find that since the inception of the National Ninth Assembly, we started on a good note, i.e. the screening of the ministers on time, the MTEF consideration and passage on time. Of course, now finally with the appropriation bill being passed on time, which certainly, God willing, will return us to the January-December, circle. And I believe Mr. President is very committed to that, and certainly the National Assembly, whom we thank very much and congratulate, have done their best to ensure that we return to that budget cycle. They were committed to it, and they have delivered, for which we are indeed very grateful and appreciative of this harmonious relationship that has been existing between the executive and the legislative arm. And certainly that is very important and indeed good for the implementation of the budget on time, and certainly we'll see growth in the implementation as well as the implementation of infrastructural projects that will touch the lives of Nigerians.
All right, still with you in this respect. The reasons given by, for example, the 8th Assembly for the long delays in passing a budget, which of course we experience in other National Assemblies, 7th Assembly as the case may be, has been that they need to do adequate scrutiny of what the President has presented to them, to of course make input as well. In this regard, would you say that this Assembly, 9th Assembly, did a good job of it before sending it back to the President? Because we also had the occasions where the President had to also point out some perhaps errors here and there, and return the entire thing back to the National Assembly. Did they do a thorough job this time around?
I believe a thorough job was done because before even the presentation of the budget, there are pre-budget consultative meetings at different levels between the executive and the legislature. Especially the ministry settled with, presenting the budget, Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, as well as the leadership and indeed the committees relevant to the appropriation bill. So a lot of consultation took place prior to the presentation and indeed after the presentation. And as I'm sure you are all aware that in terms of the budget defenses, a lot of time had been saved because there are joint sessions of the Senate and the House of Representatives which looked and indeed listened to the MDAs defending their budgets. So that shortened the period. But I can guarantee you that a thorough job was done by the legislature, and they took their time. They were committed to it. They worked through the night, sometimes up to 2 a.m., 3 a.m., to ensure they had done a good job, as well as to make sure that the time frame set by the legislature was met, i.e. the passage in this month.
What do we know? Ney, I know you are itching to comment now. We'll get into the numbers shortly with you. But still on process with the SSA to the President. What do we know now from the versions passed by the two chambers? Are the versions similar? Or, again, in terms of process, will the passage of the two chambers, by the two chambers of the bill obviate the necessity for harmonization? Or, what do we expect? In other words, how soon, of course, that's for the clerk of the National Assembly to indicate, might a clean copy of the bill as passed be forwarded to the President?
Well, we're hoping as soon as next week the clean copy would be transmitted to the President for his consideration and assent. And I believe, as far as, like I said, this budget is a bit different from previous budgets in terms of engagement, because the two chambers of the National Assembly, worked together throughout the process. So you find that in terms of harmonization, they are on the same page, literally.
So, for purposes of this, Niyi, this is politics now. We had a unicameral legislature, more or less. But let's come to you now, Niyi. We have seen, of course, the budget size ballooned by the National Assembly on the grounds that, there are some other issues to be taken care of with regard to security, infrastructure, economic boosting, and so on and so forth. What is your reaction to what we have seen and the numbers upon which the assumptions have been based?
Yeah, thank you. I think I also want to join my voice to commend the National Assembly. This is huge. They've been working extra hard, and we have to give it to them. Well, unilateral, unicameral as it may seem, I think it's a conscious act, of a commitment to national development. It's been a long while, as you noted in your opening, that we had this experience, and it's good for the larger population. One, by increasing the benchmark, for instance, of the budget from 55 to 57, one may feel uncomfortable, especially when you look at the dynamics of oil price in the international markets. But I feel there's still that bracket in terms of offsetting or whatever may be the negatives, in our increased capacity to produce more. Of late, we've heard that oil production had been ramped up to 2.3 million barrels, by the NNPC. And to that extent, if there is an eventual fall in the price of crude oil going forward, that will be offset by increasing the production. So I am a little bit comfortable with that. The OPEC Plus, and also whatever influence or goodwill Nigeria had been exercising in the international marketplace for finance and investment, I am yet to have a feel of it. But a lot of concessions are being made for the Nigerian nation. For instance, our limits for the OPEC Plus control markets was 1.69 million barrels a day. But over the last 2 months, it was increased to 1.77 million barrels per day. Now, so if we are talking of 2.3 million barrels now, these orders would be provided for through our condensate production. So it's not as if we are going above the limits, So I am looking forward to a very robust fiscal 2020. It's if you look at the budget as it were, 10.596, it's also breaking new threshold. We are looking also at the public procurement amendment bill, as it were. I think that also is pivotal to the implementation of the budget, because if you don't have such bill, such act, eventually when it is signed, you also have a slowdown, especially in the implementation of our capital leg of the appropriation bill, as it were. Now, what is important is that we have moved the threshold of mobilization from 15% to 30%, and I believe the president will sign that into law. The direct implication is a lesser pressure on contractors, and of course a lesser tendency to go looking for credits in the banks. And that's the consequence of that is also reduced cost of implementation of capital projects. When you also look at the finance bill, there's a lot of work really. Now we can substantially calculate what earnings the federal government will be earning, either through the VAT bill, and of course through the PSC too that had earlier been. When you look at all this, you see a new ecosystem evolving, in that place. And then you can also extend that to what the CBN is doing, the Monetary Authority is doing, in terms of the loan-to-deposit ratio and compelling deposit money banks to lend more, to SMEs and all that. So I feel that we are in for a good jolly ride, and especially as we return to this January to December cycle, what is established is predictability, and that's the most important thing. Predictability and measurability. You can predict what will happen in first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter, and measure them as appropriate.
Okay,
So,
let's pause you there for a while, and of course get you to talk on other aspects of this. For instance, it is in the know that the 2019 budget implementation, is supposed to come to an end within the first quarter of 2020, and now we are reverting to the January-December budget cycle. So what's going to happen? Right, in terms of adjustments, that are required, especially at the implementation aspect of the 2019 budget, which is still running at the moment. And another aspect of this will be, there's been a lot of talks about the financing of our budget through improved IGR, given the disparity with what was submitted, that is 10.5 trillion, and what was passed by the two chambers. Now, how do you think the budget can be financed when other sectors are not playing any part in terms of financing? Because we have always predicted a budget on oil benchmark and what is expected, because anything can happen, along the line. But sometimes there is some hitches along the line with respect to international oil market.
Yes, well, don't also forget that the target for 2020 in terms of revenue generation, non-oil sector is about 1.8 trillion and above. So there is a specific target to that. And we have seen a lot of capacity being shown by the FIRS, and of course the Custom and Excise departments, So to that extent, one could, the FIRS and the Customs had actually been breaking new threshold in terms of revenue generation, in the last 2-3 quarters, So I feel that would be made sustained and, of course, be achieved. And don't also forget that there's the 3.4 trillion thereabouts revenue to be earned from other income. That will be sales of some national assets, mostly, and of course from recoveries. And so much have been recovered this time around. So, in fact, the more money, about 60% of the revenue to be earned this fiscal year are targeted at from other incomes, which is more creative, because one is organic. We are not going to go borrowing when it comes to that, and we are going to sell off perhaps some of our assets that are dormant, and of course create them into capital without losing the total value. While some people will say, okay, sell 100% of perhaps our venture collaboration with oil-producing companies, but now we are going to sell like 10%, 20%, and that goes a long way in providing liquidity.
All right, thank you very much, Ney Akinseju and Honorable Umar Ibrahim El Yakub, two guests that have taken our questions. We have a third guest in the studio also. He's just come in. It's Distinguished Senator Jibrin Barau. He's chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriation. Distinguished Senator, a pleasure to have you with us.
Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
All right, so let's turn to you now for your reaction. I mean, the National Assembly has received quite some praise for the speedy passage of the bill that was presented by the President barely 2 months ago. What was the magic?
Well, you see, we've been saying it before now that anything good is doable in this country, provided the political will is there. Now, it has been shown that we can do it, we can transform this country. We can do everything to develop this country to go at par with what is happening elsewhere, globally. Some people thought it could not be done, but when the President decided that he wants that to be done, he wanted that to be done ab initio, when the Senate President, the Speaker, and indeed the entire membership of the National Assembly decided, look, we need to return our budget cycle to begin from January to end in December, as applicable in other climes, because that will give government, our businesses, indeed everyone in the country, to be able to plan well. to plan with some level of certainty, not to go with budget cycles that are not certain. Today it could begin from July, tomorrow, next year, even from November, and so on and so forth. So now when you have this combination of political will, of the willingness of the people, of the entire leadership of the country to change the course of things, then that would give rise to what we're being able to do. We work day and night. We could see from what happened at the executive arm of government, where the president and indeed his entire team had sleepless night to put the proposal together, and they were able to do that in record time. And when it was brought to us, we resolved that, look, we must work extra time. We worked in the nights, in the days, everywhere, every time. We put everything together, all our resources together. And the response from the executive was also very good, because the ministers were always responding appropriately to our invitations. And we were able to put all the budget together, process the bill, and we got it passed yesterday. So it is about, the willingness of the people, the leadership to do the right thing. And once that is being put, before everything, then you have this kind of thing, this kind of, a result.
Yes, Senator Jibrin, as a matter of fact, Nigerians have been showering encomiums on the National Assembly, for being able to break what, of course, we're also referring to as a jinx. Now, you're also accused of doing a bicameral, unicameral legislation as against bicameral, as the two chambers, had to pass the budget almost same day. But what I want to ask you about is the issue of, let me use this word, ballooning the budget. That you have this history of adding to what the president has presented, of course, not just in terms of other sectors, but adding, to also ensure that the National Assembly gets more than was budgeted for by the president. One may like to ask, why should that be? But why has it also become consistent? Because over time, that's what has always happened. You put some money at a point, it was called padding and what have you. What's your response to this?
Well, you see, one has to look at the basis for all these things. Well, first of all, let me say that the framers of the presidential system of government envisage a situation where there will be check and balances. It is assumed that no person in this world has monopoly of knowledge. And the moment you decide to say, oh, this arm or this person can do everything, then you're in problem. So they decided that we should have an executive arm of government and the legislative arm of government, so that if any bill emanated from the executive, no matter how intelligent that executive arm of government could be, then of course it should be brought to the legislature where proper scrutiny, more scrutiny will be done. Because in House, indeed in the entire country, we know that there's always an adage that says a human being is 9. It cannot be up to 10. All right, you can be perfect, you can be good, but you may not be perfect. So normally, when a bill, as we all know, is being put together, then brought to the executive, or from the legislature to the executive, then it's done for the purpose of re-scrutinizing and rechecking, and making sure that probably certain things were omitted by one arm, and the other arm will now have the chance to relook at it and then bring in its own wisdom into it. So the executive brought the bill to us, and it did a marvelous job. The executive did a good job, brought a very fine proposal based on our situation. But we had to look into it, particularly the revenue side of it. And we saw, we have this problem of revenue leakages in this country. And we saw that there were some revenues that were omitted. And we got these revenues and applied them to those competing areas, those areas that need more further funding. The executive lamented the situation that we were, or we still are, that we have a lot to do to develop our economy. But the resources, the money to do that is not adequate. And so when we got these extra funds, we decided to add to those areas that need further funding and those areas that were not properly funded, particularly security area, where we know we have problems. It's obvious. Everybody knows that we have problems.
The problem has been that
But you know,
in favor of National Assembly.
I'm not finished. So what we did was to harvest this revenue that were not tapped by the executive. We did not increase the budget, just like that. There are areas like stamp duty,
which had always been a source of conflict or friction.
This is something that is seen. It can be when I show you, see it. When I show you, see it. It's something that you can
evidence-based.
It's evidence-based.
Sir, National Assembly budget is raised in this one. It has always been like that. That's what Nigerians are worried.
I've not gotten there. All right? That shouldn't be what should attract you the more. You should attract, what should attract the more is the fact that we're able to make more money and apply to the area of security, to the area of our health system, to the area of our infrastructure, and so on and so forth. We added about 30 billion to infrastructure, about several billions of naira to the area of security, about 30 billion to security. What was added to the National Assembly budget, which was omitted? In any case, 3 billion was omitted. It ought to have been 3 billion. It was 3 billion less than what should have been given to us, but because of paucity of funds, that was not done. So, but when we got this money and applied the monies to the areas that need further funding, then we realized that look, National Assembly has to be in a situation to perform its function in the best manner possible.
I just wondering, in our newspaper review segment a while ago, our newspaper review by Atebe raised a pertinent issue. Who defends the budget of the National Assembly before the National Assembly?
Yeah, the management. We are legislators, then we have the normal bureaucracy.
The clerk?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. You have the bureaucracy, the civil servant like you, and they are the ones that put all these figures together, not us.
Okay.
They requested, the CNA brought a letter. If I knew you were going to ask me this question, I brought the letter to show you that, look, we cannot perform well. Our money was cut. But now, since we have more revenue, please, we want that money to be returned so that we can perform our function the way we should.
Okay.
So we did not ask for it. It was the civil servants,
the bureaucracy of the National Assembly.
Yes,
we're speculating on that earlier.
Your colleagues,
that it will be the clerk of the National Assembly who will do that. But one point that we try to also clarify from the Senior Special Assistant to the President is, now, the collaboration between the executive and the legislature has been noted. And also the collaboration between the Senate and the House of Reps in terms of almost joint sessions or joint sittings of the appropriate committees on this issue has been noted, which is why we were talking about a virtual unicameral legislature on this business. Is there, after the passage of the bill by the two houses, by the two chambers, would there be a necessity for harmonization, or it's a done deal?
It has been harmonized. What we try to do, you see, every situation, every country, it has its own peculiarities. And you need to look at your own peculiarity, take what you can leverage on to make your system to be more stronger and better. And you don't just, for instance now, because, now, in the U.S. Congress, probably you have differences between the House of Representatives and the Senate, probably because of party differences. In the Senate of the United States, you have a situation where the Republican Party has the majority, whereas in the Congress, in House of Representatives, the Democrats have the majority. They always have difference in terms of opinion. Look at the impeachment process going on right now. It might not, it's been...
But there's also bipartisan collaboration.
Sometimes they are on national issue of national interest.
That's right.
Now, this is an issue of national interest. Could there be any issue that has could be paramount to our national interest more than the budgetary system?
All right.
All right. So we decided that, look, let's work together. Excuse me. So that people will understand this. What happened. So now we agreed that, look, the committees should come together, brainstorm, look at all these issues, and then take a stance, common stance.
Yes,
And that was done. And that did not mean there were no differences.
But we're going to stop you here.
Why
because,
putting the national interest in the front
on our side now? We have two other topics to discuss this morning on this edition of the program. I'd like to appreciate all of you. The important thing that we have noted is the fact that the ballooning is reasonable.
It's not
Whatever it is reasonable, right? But Nigerians will be looking for a situation where in this country that members of National Assembly will negotiate downwards what gets to them, as they did in Kenya when the present administration in Kenya commenced. They unanimously agreed to reduce their pay, for the survival of that country in Kenya presently, and the Nigerians want to see that one day when we say, look, cut off our salary, reduce it, and let us be part of other Nigerians who are. This is a different discussion.
As indeed, gentlemen, there are other aspects because no bill is ancillary, but let's say for purposes of discussing the appropriation bill 2020, there were other ancillary bills such as the finance bill and the public procurement bill. There are matters arising from those ones which we'll consider in due course. On that note, we'd like to thank Niyi Akinseju, regular guest with us on Good Morning Nigeria, is a finance and investment analyst. Thanks a lot for your numbers. We also would like to appreciate Honorable Umar Ibrahim El Yaqub, is SSA to the President of National Assembly Matters with responsibility for the House of Reps. Thanks a lot for being with us. Chairman.